This week in Hey the Parents, we're talking about that dreaded day when your child joins Wi-Fi, or more intense, the day your child gets a phone. This episode is all about monitoring your child, setting up a trusting atmosphere, some of the things that you can do as a parent, and have a genuine conversation with your child about expectations. Because if you wouldn't say it in the house, you probably shouldn't say it online. So listen up, group chat. It's time to get with the program because we've got the keys to the router, the password to screen time, and on this episode, we're talking about kids and the internet. And of course, we talk about when we were younger, mishaps with our own kids, and what the supposed experts say. Because it's the three of us and all of you. I'm Michael Height.
I'm Sara D.
And I'm Michael Bean.
Kids don't come with a handbook, so we need your help.
Where do babies come from?
Where do you think they come from?
Is this a kissing book?
Mama! Mama!
What?
Hi.
I learned it by watching you.
There are no rules in this house. Not like a regular mom. I'm a cool mom.
We sent them to the best boarding schools. We hired the best nannies. We did everything right.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
No drinking, no drugs, no kissing, no tattoos, no piercings, no ritual animal slaughters of any kind.
Together, we can rule the galaxy as father and son.
This is Hey Other Parents, an honest, messy, imperfect show for raising kids.
All right, hey, it's us again. Welcome.
Hello.
What's up, guys?
Guys, big deal. I'm very excited for middle of the week night. I just want to raise my glass to you, my friends, my little Diet Coke here, because we have arrived at it was episode 20. That's a big deal. I feel good about that.
Look at us. Ching ching. Let's do it.
Congrats.
Chin chin, my friends. So
Yes,
the thing about it is it's been very rewarding for us so far. I feel like I've really been enjoying just talking to you guys every week, and we there's topics that we just kind of get into, and if this is the first time you join the show, thank you. If this is the first time joining the show, this is a parenting podcast where what we do every week is we pick a theme, we pick a topic, hear each other's opinions and sides, and all the way that we raise our kids, how we grew up. And then sometimes we even take away some advice from each other or change our perspectives. It's kind of a cool opportunity for us as parents to kind of learn from each other and learn from you guys. But this week, something kind of cool. I was speaking to our friend Julianne. She's a friend of the show. Her daughters go to the same school as my guys. And she also works at the dojang where my kids do Taekwondo. And she's been listening to the show. And she stopped me and she's like, hey, did you know, I know that you guys were talking about like chores and money and this, that, and the other. What I didn't know is like for the Greenlight card is one of the things we talked about in that episode. And for that, that was like the app that my kids use for monitoring their chores and then just like, get a little bit of money, whatever else. Okay, so that's what we use one thing for. But what she did say is she uses the app. She's been using it for a while. And one of the things that was very useful was when her daughter had gone with the school overseas to Europe over break, to perform overseas and just, travel and just learn stuff. She used the Greenlight app. And what was very interesting about that is that credit cards could be very tricky overseas. But what's very cool about this is they don't charge international fees, which is super duper useful because not only can you see like a record of like where your child's been, where they're taking money out, all the transactions. Why is your child calling Uber? That whole thing. But it also gives you a sense of like, that when you're doing these like small transactions, like you're not paying international fees, because what happens is on certain credit cards like an American Express or cards that are meant for travel, what they do is when you do a transaction, they take at the time of the transaction, they take the current state of conversion at that moment, and then that's applied to the purchase. But when you have a credit card that has fees, it's also like you're going to an ATM and you're getting hit with that charge. It's not your bank. So every time you use a credit card overseas, you're getting nailed with that. But what's really cool about the Greenlight app is that it doesn't happen. So that's something that I didn't even know that card did. But it was a great conversation because it's
That's
something
amazing. Yeah, because
It's a little parenting hack.
Yeah, a little parenting hack. And when you think about it, because I know like with Sophia's Cash App, it isn't accepted everywhere. So to hear that the Greenlight is accepted overseas is kind of nice. I
remember when my wife and I had been dating a while. That sounds weird. Before she was my wife, we went up to Canada and, she was like pro Discover card. And then we were laughing because like it wasn't taken anywhere. It was like, it wasn't a big deal, obviously, but like we go to a gas station and be like, how are we going to pay? Are we going to borrow for this? 'Cause, I had like, whatever I had, like American Express or Visa, whatever it was. But it was like Discover wasn't happening. But, whatever it is. But it was kind of an insightful thing to know. And we always value hearing about little tip or strategies or anything that comes to mind about one of our episodes, because even in passing, that was great information, and we want to pass it along to our listeners and to each other, because hey man, sometimes you go to Canada or something else, and you gotta because especially if your kids have this app, they want to spend money, which obviously, but then when you're like, okay, do I want to constantly have this thing where like I lay down the cash and then I have them pay me back, or should I have them go through the experience of actually like purchasing and then and that whole thing and seeing the money go bye in the moment. I just almost turned it into a boy band song just now. That's amazing.
I love it. Absolutely.
But I like how your little experience was like one of our listeners helping us, and it's kind of like at full circle. We our listeners help us. We help our listeners. We're trying to help each other. It's really cool.
It's like a vicious cycle, isn't it? And then our bad advice goes out into the world, and maybe it'll come back to us. Who knows?
And then we'll forget about that one.
I love it.
Yeah, exactly. No, but thank you guys. Keep them coming, keeping the emails and all that good stuff. But speaking of shows, because this episode, we are going to get into it. This episode specifically is going to be about an interesting topic. We've been kind of like holding back on it because we're like, how are we going to handle this? How are we going to talk about this? But this is an interesting topic, and we know that we can't get into every aspect of it. And I want to start the topic off by just kind of mentioning a couple things. This episode specifically is going to be about kids and the internet, unleashing the hounds, opening up the gates, letting the Wi-Fi in, sharing the bandwidths, and making that happen. But before we start, we're not going to explain the how part of how to like set up parenting control. Or like how to set up screen time, how to set up these things. We're going to mention a couple of them. But I will say that when we get up to certain parts of the show, when we talk about like certain ways that you can monitor, we do recommend, we'll put a couple things in the show notes, like with links and stuff, Apple or like Android or whatever it is. It's recommended that maybe like you research that device and make an informed decision on what's good for you and your family. So we will talk about a couple things, but don't be alarmed if we're not going to go deep into that, because we rather talk about the parenting aspect of it and our experiences and how our viewpoints maybe are shifted, or total control, a mix of control, stepping back, swooping in. So we're going to talk about all these things. Okay, so we're going to take on a step back in time for a little hot second, and we're going to talk about a couple things when we were younger. And I think that we know it's going to be very short-lived, because as we all know, we are aware that there was very few internet-related things when we were younger. And those kind of things kind of came a little later when we were in college and stuff like that in high school. So we are going to talk a little bit about that, but obviously the majority of this episode is going to be dipping right into what we're dealing with now. But I will say, I'm curious, because this is kind of the fun part of the show for me anyway. But when we were younger, I remember my mom, who was a teacher, she came home one day with this disc, well, of course, or CD, and it was for Prodigy Online. And I was like, I got this thing for school, and you could go on Prodigy. And my sister and I were like, I don't know, do that. So we go online, and we thought like it was going to be like message boards and talking to people and like learning about stuff and like learning about the world and Encyclopedia Britannica at home, whatever it was. We load this thing up, and it was like, as an educator, you get 5 hours of Prodigy Online. We know what was going on. We loaded it up. We connected to the modem. It was like, we get online, and it was like, you hardly had access to anything. It was this big screen of disaster. And then eventually you got like some home internet. You dial up, you got in. We had 2 phone lines. And I remember like, no, we didn't have 2 lines. We had 1 phone line. And I remember, do you remember like, this is such a ridiculous conversation right now, but as a parent, if you're listening to this, you probably also experienced this. Do you remember when call waiting came out? and then if somebody called you while call waiting was on, it would you would get disconnected. You were done. You would get disconnected from the internet.
Or if someone like picked up the phone and you were still dialing hello, and you're like, oh my god, I'm trying to get on the internet, Mom.
No, but that was so weird, man. We had that whole thing, and like I believe there was a way you could dial like something else to turn it off. I don't remember what it was. Not that it matters now, because hey, it's been a while.
It was a wild, wild west.
It was a wild west, and I remember distinctly the big thing that I think probably, since like the 3 of us are a little different age, I feel the big thing that kind of ties us together would probably be AOL Instant Messenger.
Oh yeah.
Now that was that was the beginnings of like my experience of like just dealing with people who I did not know, and that was like it was like almost like Vegas for a high school kid, because it was always open, and it was like this idea that you could like hop online, hop on a computer, didn't matter if it was before school, after school, at night, but like it feels like it was just like things are happening, people are talking, there's all these rooms, there's all this conversation, people are LOLing, they're making faces.
Oh Lord!
There was all this little goofy ASCII chat where like you type like, you know, an equal sign and a parentheses and it looked like someone smiling. There's crazy things happening. But that was like, that was a weird feeling, because I feel like our parents didn't know what the heck was going on. And I feel like whoever had access to were kind of like pioneers of this internet type thing. I feel like our parents had no idea what was going on with this thing. And it felt like a very, what do you say, like the Wild Wild West?
It sure was, man. Oh, like when you think about like those aim away messages, like I remember like sometimes like you're like, I'm feeling dark and moody as a teen, and you leave like a dark and moody like Linkin Park lyric,
or
like
you would like throw some like
a little
your weight
Fiona
message.
Apple, and you're like, I'm a criminal, just over here. And then like you're away, and then like you do that dramatically, and then people like respond, and you're like, ooh, they like that.
Yeah.
Like,
You're like,
that was,
Sara D, I'm
beginning
only
of the-
happy when it rains, okay?
I know, right? Or like,
It's complicated.
or if you read something like that, you're like, ooh, she's in a bad mood today. Let me see what's
Yep.
going on. You know, like,
Yep.
man, it was fun.
I remember those. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, first of all, the dial up, the 3 icons that would always come up,
Oh,
you
God.
know,
Yep.
It was really like it felt like this big monumental thing, like as if it was like Indiana Jones trying to get like the Last Crusade, trying to get like the cup. Like you had to pass 3 tests before you could get access, and like you watch those boxes in desperation. Like, will the first one pass?
Yes.
Okay, we have go. That is Roger 1. We got go. We are now to box number 2. Box number 2, we are live. We are happening. Box number 3, give me a no go for internet.
Yes.
And then you get
And when it drops it, like
Yes.
you're on, or it drops it, and you're like, oh man, and you try over. We had a lot of tenacity, us older folks, because like now, if the Wi-Fi isn't working, we're all freaking out. But back in the day, when you saw the first icon, the second icon, the third dropped, you're like, okay, I'm gonna try again, and you try again,
Yes.
and you get through, or your mom goes hello, and you're like, no, get off the thing, you know, like. We
It's
kept
almost like you're
trying
trying to run
get
like a battle station, and you're like, "What are you doing?"
yes,
and then
man.
you get on the AOL Instant Messenger, you know, and all you see all your friends list come up on the right hand side, and you're
Oh
just
my
like,
God,
all your
yes.
parents see your dollar signs, and you're like, "Wait, how many hours did we agree to per month?"
and you're just like, oh my God, is this friend on? Is that friend on? And then you see their away messages, and you're checking their messages.
Yes,
It's like
because like
it was all part of that experience, you know.
right. So like you would basically like it's so weird because like it sounds so dumb now, but like it was so empowering because like you didn't have voicemail or anything like that as a kid. Like you don't have your own answering machine. You had like the family answering machine. And then you would get home from school, you press a button and be like, you have 2 messages. And it'd be like, beep. And it'd be like, it would be like, you know, somebody that you didn't know. It'd be like someone calling from like, you know, the whatever to
Like
to
the
sell you
doctor's
something.
office.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
or
the doctor.
yeah.
I was trying to remind you of your appointment, you know, and then
you're like,
the second one would be like, maybe this one's for me. You're like, oh, it's
Yes.
I remember like my grandmother called, be like, she would like sign it like she was like writing like a note. She'd be like, love Nana, and then like that's not how you do this. It's not a. We get it. Thank you, Nana. So so like, but this was empowering because it was like almost like you had somebody who was like taking notes for you. Oh, did somebody call while I was out? Oh, thank you, Janet. So this was like, you know, like if you grew up in a family where it wasn't just you couldn't be logged on more than once. So like you had to log out for someone else to log in.
Oh yeah,
and then they could like, hold on, I have to just check my away messages before I sign out. And then you had to hop on, right? Oh man.
No, but it was a good way for you to talk to your friends without, you know, back then it was just like, oh, give them a call. And if they picked up, you were able to speak to them. You know, now you're able to talk to your friends, the first of its kind, through these messages, you know, of AOL Instant Messenger, or just leaving a message. Let's say there were some times where I left a message just to put a message up, but I was there.
Wow. That's what I'm saying. You put the dramatic, dark, moody one.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And I just want to see who will message me, who wants to reach out to me.
A little emo.
Yeah, yeah.
Looking for friends who found Star Wars in their parents' garage.
Oh man. Or 8 cold SpaghettiOs in the
There'll
garage.
be no one to stop us this time.
Who wants to be a Jedi Master?
Yes. And then you guys remember like MySpace.
Oh man,
That was
MySpace
also a
and
fun
Friendster
time.
and all that. That was crazy.
Yep. That was a crazy time. Like, remember we were all like codesters because we were like HTML, backspace,
Oh,
Starry
man.
Night, underslash, and like stuff like that. And you're
And
like,
then you would put like music. You'd have like your own theme music and then like your colors and put some
top
borders
five,
up, mess
yep.
it all up, and you're like, oh my god, what I do?
And a nice grainy picture for you.
No, but so wait, who was the guy? Was it Friendster or MySpace? One of them had the thing where like you joined it and you automatically started with one friend, and then it was like the dude with the picture.
Oh, that was my Facebook. That was Tom.
That Facebook? Oh, was
Tom
that
was
Tom
your
from
first
Facebook?
friend. Yeah.
Oh, you're
Tom.
right.
Remember him?
Yes, the
Yes.
random little like.
Yes. Oh, okay. Did you guys spend hours thinking of the best like a messenger name? Like,
Oh, man.
What was gonna be like? Was gonna be like XX baby angel 1 2 3 XX? You know, like something like that. Like, did you guys spend time?
Oh yeah, mine was
Oh,
Battle
man.
Cruiser. XX
Ooh.
Battle Cruiser.
Oh, look at
XX.
you.
My new name came later when I was like, well, I guess I'm going back to school now to go back to New York to do something else. I was like back to school 79 or something like that.
Oh, really? Oh,
exactly.
mine was so embarrassing, but
remember.
I just can just say it's like Angel was a big theme in a lot of the girls' names. So it was like
Dolphins
something
and
Angel.
angels and horses.
Oh God, so cringy. I don't know what I was thinking.
I love it.
I wish my mom was watching over me during this time.
Right, you know what I would appreciate? I'd appreciate some parenting right now.
I need some parenting.
But the thing that was I think the biggest moment I think for our generation was probably college. I would say maybe, or at least for me it was. Because in college, that was like the thing where like you go to your dorm room, you plug your computer into the wall, and it was like internet on all the time. And then that was like for us, it was like you go to class, you come back, and like, oh, then you check your instant messengers again. Like, what's going on? You know. Another thing that I think was a weird shift in the world, at least for me, was, well, besides the really like lame acronyms that seem like they haven't gone anywhere yet, LOL, was the idea of anonymity, the idea where people didn't have to be their own names. And that was a very weird thing because, like, you know, the phone rings, unless somebody was pranking you, you did *67, like you knew who you were talking to. Where on the internet, I think that at least for us growing up, maybe for like us being like their parents didn't really experience it, but we did. I think we had to experience that for the first time as like, how do you deal with people online? You don't know who the heck they are. And I think anonymity was a weird thing because it was like, in one hand, people could talk a lot of smack because there's no repercussions. But then in the other hand, it was like, it kind of like led to the early days of like, people could like, you know, say whatever the heck they want, you know?
Yeah, or like questionable behavior and things like that. Yeah, it was definitely, it was eye-opening, I feel like, you know, because you're like so naive, this brand new toy that we're all playing with, and it's like, you could be anyone. And it's like, if you could be anyone could be anyone.
Are you saying I'm not a supermodel from
I know. Yes, exactly. You know, God knows what I said, so we're not going to go back there.
But it does feel like maybe this is a good leaping off point to jump into the now, because we know what our experiences were. We know we had some Friendster. We know that Friendster was broken after the first 5 minutes. We know that Facebook at one point was only for your college. And then that whole thing got changed. But now here we are, and we are in a land now where Friendster's gone. No one's using Facebook on that age. And everyone's on something else. So we're spending time now talking about our experiences now with our own kids and the modern times and what that feels like for us as parents. And one of the things, just real fast, I think maybe this is a good time to maybe mention it, is we are going to speak briefly about some devices and that sort of thing, but most of the conversation is going to be about this idea of you know, kind of watching what the kids are doing and that whole thing, and maybe monitoring and playing accordingly and having good conversations. But real fast, when it comes to devices, is kind of this idea of like iPads versus phones versus tablets versus computers. When our kids were younger, we started to think about, as they started to get older, and like having exhibiting some level of like monitoring and that whole thing. I will say that for the most part, it's borderline impossible to have an iPad shared across a bunch of people and monitor what they're doing. So if you feel as a parent, maybe as this discussion is going on, as we talk about a bunch of things, and you feel like you want to exhibit a little bit more control and just see what's going on and really monitor, you're probably going to have to be the family where you have more than one iPad, because option one is everybody sharing, you don't know what's going on. Option two is you're setting the controls for a certain age, which maybe doesn't match all the kids. Or the worst option is where you're giving them all access of your stuff. And we'll spend a little bit more time talking about why that's maybe not the greatest idea. Android's a little bit easier in some ways, like you could sign in, sign out like a Chromebook. That could be a shared device in some ways, where maybe a phone would be harder, but like a device, like more of a computer kind of thing where kids have different usernames and profiles, that's a little bit easier. But as far as like the way that these things go, most families are probably looking at like a tablet type situation where the kids are using that, or maybe the family computer. Like we use a Mac that we have like in a family room, and I have different accounts for the kids where they sign in and sign out. Do you guys have that at your house? Do you have different accounts or profiles or things that the kids could kind of use independently, or do they have shared devices?
So all my kids have iPads, and I have them logged on to like the family plan where they have their own like account and everything. And I'm able to, what's cool with Apple is you're able to put restrictions on what they can download, what access they could have to apps, and things like that. So
to be clear, you're using screen time, right?
Yes. So, and I love that I'm able to limit their screen time, because they do get super addicted to it, you know? And they want to do more. And, you know, even I've been talking to some of Lucas's friends, and like even their parents, like they won't utilize those features, but they'll just won't give their child their iPad until the weekend. Like they get it on the weekend so they could, you know, kind of play around and do whatever they want on it. But I definitely think if you use those features, it'll help out with, you know, what you do. So.
No, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Sarah, how about you?
So like Gina and I, we made the mistake in some ways of having Sophia and Julian share an account. But then as, you know, Sophia's 4 years older than Julian, as she started to like get into her own things, and kind of like, it's so strange. Like they kind of like need for their own Gmail and to have like their own stuff kind of like, and also too, like we found out with like with Apple at least, her phone contacts were connected to his iPad, and like, so we learned the hard way. It's better off to give the kids each of their own accounts. So now we have we made Sophia's old account that they shared into like a family account. Sophia has her own now. Julian has his own. But before that was like a big issue. It was like her trying to have some privacy. Julian being like, "Oh, Brianna texted you something," and it's like, yeah, she needs to get out of her texts. Yeah, exactly. And you know, and at the same time, like we have control. Or, you know, especially when she was younger, a little more control over her privacy, quote unquote. But we also didn't want like him like reading her stuff, you know, or like like whatever her conversations were, they were pretty benign. But you know, like it's none of his business. He was 4 years younger, you know, like get out of the conversation, please.
So one of the things that I think that's really funny. One of the things that I think that for us, it was kind of like we learned through our oldest. So like Jacob is our oldest now. He's 11. And, you know, you know, it's either that like, it's like baptism by fire, or you kind of like sort of try to like set some boundaries, sit back, watch how that goes and tweak it as you go. But I think we sort of tried to like do the same thing, but I think we had the same situation where everything's shared, it's cute when they're little, but all of a sudden you're like, nah, this isn't working anymore.
All of a sudden it's an age that just it happens. So like for Nisha, she is 10 years older than Sophia. So with her, she had like a sidekick. There really wasn't much happening. Like the biggest thing that she had going on was like senior year for her, or like junior year, was this like app called Yik Yak, and that it was like a springboard, I think, or something like that we used to call, where you can like post anonymous things like, oh, you know, like whatever racy question you had, and people would start like outing people about different things.
Oh, like would you do it like as a school? Like your school has a springboard? Or
like,
it was like in general?
it was like almost like in the area. So it was like anyone who lived in whatever town. Have you ever?
It's sort of like still narrowed it down the scope of like within a town, like people could kind of know each other.
Yeah, but then like if somehow like I think I remember like if you like went to another town, you could read their gossip. So it was like basically gossip, but it turned to like a nasty. You know, obviously with anything and
that could turn super nasty.
It could turn really ugly. So it turned to like who has like the ugliest dog, I don't know, and then like they start like saying blah 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 blah, you know, then it turns to someone is a dog, and then you know like it goes left, it goes left,
and it goes
really
downhill quickly.
Yeah, and so with Sunisha, that was like the biggest drama, but at that point like she kind of was like not really into it. She was going to college, she didn't have time for it, was like quote unquote. And then like with Sophia, like you know it was the shared profile that was the biggest issue for us. And then we did some of the screen time stuff. She quickly learned the password to override the screen time thing.
Right.
Nice.
But what I always love about Sophia, she always be like, Mom, can I get like 10 more minutes? I'm like, yeah, just put in the password. She'll be like, okay, cool. And she's like, but she'll ask before she actually just put it in, you know? So.
Right. Yeah. Well, a gripe as a parent, I just will say that this sounds like such a small thing, but it's really not. So we use like an Apple TV for like our streaming stuff, which is connected to like a lot of accounts. So like, you know, we have like Disney Plus, we have Netflix, we have all the typical stuff that you'd expect. Then when you set up parenting control or parenting, you know, whatever, like the different age restrictions and stuff, Netflix is great because you pick up your phone and as you put in your 4-digit PIN and you type it in your phone and it shows up with like just dots on the screen, but you do it on your phone so no one sees. Disney Plus, like maybe if you were a bigger company, you could figure this out, seriously. There's a problem with that because you can't do it on your phone. You have to do and scroll over to the numbers on the screen. So I'm literally telling my kids, like, could you look down at the floor for a second? How much trust do you have to have in your family? Like, what do you tell your kids to leave the room? Like, it's the most ridiculous thing. So I will say, if you're going to set PIN numbers and things like that, just the weakest link of the chain is going to be a problem. So if you're going to use your same 4-digit PIN for that as you do for screen time, just be expected to let your child have full control over everything because you basically giving away the keys to the castle.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't
but
use
one
your
thing,
dress.
yeah, exactly. But one thing that I think we were talking about before the show as we were kind of setting things up was an experience that I think Sarah and I both had where, so like, for example, on our TV, I have like a YouTube account set up. And for the longest time, it's my account. So one day I look up and I think like it was Jacob or Ethan. I think it was Jacob. I think he wrote a reply on someone's video. And I'm like, what did you just do? He's like, I said something good about it. And I'm like, okay, cool. You did not ask permission. Tears just ready. And I was like, no, I get it, but this is a no-go. You have to talk to us about everything online. Because not only was it like, wait a minute, I didn't ever say you could do that. I never said you couldn't do that. That's probably a problem. But it was like, I mean, that was shame on us, but it was also like, dude, no. So he was commenting on a video in a very innocent way, but now you've like, basically you have put your digital footprint out there on my account. So now it looks like I did it. And then it was like, whoa, we got like 15 issues going on right now. 1, there's a lesson about what you write on the internet. 2, it's about giving you access. 3, you definitely need your own account because I don't want to comment on something and you are commenting on my behalf. So that's something that, you know, it all of a sudden that was like, we need to be better parents to this.
Right. And you're opening yourself also up to like, even though it's under your name, but like other people like commenting on that comment. So it's like, oh, this video is awesome. And then people could be, you know, like be unkind and say things back. And then if your child reads that, you're not aware of it, they can take that to heart. So when I had that with Julian had done that. Like he liked the video, he made a comment, and I was like, no, whoa, wait, hey, whoa. And especially like with my phone, you know, I'm sure with many parents, your work account might be connected to your personal account. Yeah. So like, I'm like, what account did you watch this video on?
It's
first
okay.
off?
I just emailed your boss and said blah, blah, blah.
What did you comment? What kind of video is this? You know, so it's like, I'm like, delete my thing, you know, and it's like, God knows. Cause in this day and age of like quickly screenshotting something, you know, things could get drudged up. Like you just never know. And like, for the most part, I think us 3, I think we're pretty much raising kids who are not watching things that are too particularly, out of the box and stuff like that. But you just never know,
Yeah.
Right, and
like,
we're not, obviously we're not
thing.
seriously, let's be honest, we're not like perfect parents here, but like the
No.
thing is, like, even though we started this podcast, we're learning.
Yep.
We are telling you straight up, as this whole internet thing started with our kids, we all messed up. Like it was
we sure did.
full out from day one. It was like, whoop, disaster, way to go, height. So the thing is like, when we're doing this, like, we're learning and we're trying to figure it out. And sometimes like we have to like make a mistake and then fix it before we could go to the next thing. And sometimes like I'll just throw my hands up in the air and be like, whoa, everybody pause here for a second. No one's touching a device for like an hour. And then I turn into like total like my dad mode and I'm like, oh, we gotta figure this out. But it's hard because there's so many things that they are doing in school where they're like writing a comment or they're talking to their teacher and they don't really see the difference in the world when you're putting yourself out there to like the general public,
I think also too, when you give your children access to the internet, I think what comes with that is constant monitoring, and not to the extent of like you're just like totally taking away or all restrictions on them, putting so many restrictions on them, just being aware of what they're viewing. I mean, I remember when when Lucas started watching YouTube, he was like, I think 5 or 6. And one of the things he saw was just an innocent little video of a guy making a jetpack out of soda cans. And it was,
that was me.
It was, yeah.
Okay.
It was just funny because he's like, Dad, I really want to make a jetpack out of soda cans. I'm like, Lucas, this is YouTube. Not everything on it is real. It's like an illusion. It's like, no, Dad, I saw it with my eyes. Like, I saw this guy flying in the air with a jetpack and he made it out of soda. And like me and him, here I am with a 6-year-old arguing back and forth, like, as trying to have my patience, and I'm like, you know what, Lucas, fine, let's go outside, let's make a soda jetpack right now. So I literally like took two 2-liter bottles and I'm like, look, bud, you can't make a jetpack out of it. And like, I felt so bad because like he just started hysterically crying. Like, I crushed his every dream.
How many Mentos did you put in? Like, seriously.
I mean, yeah.
How many times do we have to talk about this?
I know.
Maybe we should revisit this in another episode.
How to disappoint your children.
I felt so bad because I'm like, oh my God, did I make a mistake? Did I give this kid access to YouTube too early? You know what I mean? Or before he was aware of some of the things that are not so true on YouTube. You know what I mean? So it was just tough, but he got through it. He understood it, and but I will always remember that memory. Like, I crushed his dreams of making.
No, you did, because he now likes Jurassic Park instead of Star Wars. So way to go.
Exactly.
No, but just joking aside, I will say, like, what you do bring up like an interesting conversation piece is this idea of like your kids using. So let's get into some stuff. So one of the things that I think we are talking about is like the first experiences, so early on. And one of the things that, in our household, at least, we felt pretty strongly about, like, when a young child is like using a device, they have to use it in proximity to a parent. Like, there is no taking the device to a room or going to their bedroom. Like, that's out. That's not happening when they're younger. We want to be like in the room with them or next to them on the couch and kind of monitoring or seeing what they're going to. The one thing that I think you brought up, Mike, that it was tricky is this idea of like, the whole YouTube is crack thing, because YouTube, you watch a video, that video leads to another video, leads to another video. And now you're so far away from what you intentionally started with that now you started out looking at like some kid unpacking, opening eggs for Easter. And now you're looking at like weird, like farming videos with like yaks in the back. I don't know. So the idea is like, that's something that you have to really monitor or turn off, is that autoplay or like jumping to next things, or, having access to where the child is dangerously searching where you're not really monitoring. That's like older age, obviously, right?
Yeah, but yes and no, because even like I feel like with Sophia and Julian, well, with Sophia really, We gave her our iPad. Here you go. Watch YouTube. And then there became a need to, we're like, oh my gosh, like, oh, you shouldn't be watching that. And we downloaded kids YouTube because it's such a huge leap. One time they're just watching the YouTube, whatever like video you put on for them. They're not touching nothing. They're just happy to be. And then all of a sudden they're on the yak video of farming and things like that. And you're like, what the heck are you watching? So it just they learn so quick, kids, how to go from one thing to another. And also to like, we love you YouTubers as we love our fellow podcasters, but sometimes the thumbnails or like that, the thing that they have is like very catchy and funny, and like they want to click on it. It looks funny, but they don't know what the context is. And it's not until you have that horrifying moment, I'm sure most parents have had, where you hear something, you're like, I don't like what the sound of that is, and you're like, what? You're like, give me the iPad, let me see, what are you watching? And it's like, oh my gosh, whatever it may be, and you're like, how did you get here? And then you have to like rethink everything.
Well, I think like one thing that you're bringing up is kind of like, as a parent or somebody that like knows better, is the difference between like a video that's produced that represents a company from the company. Like for example, like my kid was searching for Paw Patrol videos. Great, whoopity-doo. Ryder has a problem. Yelp for help. Here comes the dogs again. Oh, they changed their clothes. New toys at Target. So then they have people are making unofficial episodes of Paw Patrol. So they have their toys, they're holding them, and they're doing whatever. But like now it is completely, off the ranch, and you have no idea where things are going to go. And your kids are convinced that this is somehow connected to the real Paw Patrol, but it's not. It's someone that used the product, and made something that like you're a little bit outside your control, and you don't really know what's going on. So like that's the kind of thing that could connect to it, even in a subtle way that it could happen, but like in a way bigger way, like Sarah's saying, like it could go in a totally different direction. But the things that are more subtle where the lines are blurred, sometimes as a parent that could be a little trickier because your kid does not see the difference.
And that for me is actually the scarier one, because you're like, oh, that's cute. That's puppets. They're talking to each other. You start listening to the dialogue and you're like, that's not cute. Those are puppets and it's not appropriate.
Someone's mocking it or making it into
And I even think
that's where it gets scary.
I think like when these videos are posted, it even asks, is this for like children or is this for adults? And like you click that children button, but yet sometimes those videos that are for children can be a little questionable, So it's like you got to be careful, and I think that just goes back to like what I was saying. It's just like once you give your kids access, just monitor, check in every now and then, and make sure they're kind of viewing the right stuff.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that you could kind of think about. One thing that is particularly comforting are certain apps that like, okay, so this is a total side thing, but this is something to think about as a parent too, is that when your device becomes like the device that you read on, in addition to the device that you browse the internet on, that's a different scenario entirely, right? So like what we did at home too is, I know I'm like spend more money, but having even one or two, and they're not that expensive, like a Kindle Paperwhite that is tied to a library site that is only used for reading, sometimes is a good scenario to have, because you cannot go online, you cannot browse, you cannot do anything else but read books in that thing. Because sometimes access to the public library is connected to like a Kindle app, but now you have an app on like an iPad. Now you're like opening up the floodgates because you have access to everything. If you set limitations and you make certain apps available certain times of the day and you use something like Kindle, cool. Something else that's also good too, there's a website called Hoopla, Hoopla. That's another website besides like your typical Libby site that's connected to most public libraries, Libby, like library. That is another site that has books, but Libby and Hoopla really sort through everything. They make sure that's age appropriate, and then they can read books and things in a safe and more of a controlled environment. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. But one thing that you can do as a parent is, if you choose to go down this path of using any of these apps that we mentioned before, Screen Time, the family one, whatever else for Android, you can pick and choose. And basically the gist is this, without going into major detail, you could do a combination of things. You could choose like the hours in which the device is available to be used. This goes for phones, iPads, everything. You could choose between what apps they could use whenever they want. And you could even set like limits in general for a total amount of time, or you could set limits per app. So like, for example, you might say like gaming is something I don't want my kid to do, or like free range roaming of the internet is not something I want my kids to do, or like, but something else that you can do in a very safe environment, and this is important, is you can pick and choose contacts that you want your child to have access to, because God forbid something happens in your house and your child doesn't really know how to use a phone. It would be smart maybe to give them control and your family emergency contact numbers and things in your device that they would have, like, you know, your family members and that sort of thing that obviously you want them to have. But that's also in there tucked away, in case you were wondering. But for us, you know, setting limitations and things like that really was more in terms of like the age limitations. Like, you know, like the Y to 7, that whole thing. There's like ways to set it up where they can't view content that's above a certain age. And that is something that maybe in the back of your mind, maybe you're thinking as a parent for maybe kind of like how to set that up. But it's all in there. It's something that maybe you want to investigate. We'll put links in the show notes for that sort of thing. Something that we also come across is, and it's become like kind of funny because as we grew up, there's the online gaming aspect of it too. And for years, the online world of like Xbox Live has almost become like the notorious place for like the worst common denominator of society.
Yes.
So something like that is tricky because, for example, you know, obviously we talked about this with raising boys and raising girls. You did not raise all of those other children that your kids are friends with. And just like group chats, which we're going to talk about in a second, but I think online gaming is something that, you know, keep in the back of your mind. You might have to have some conversations with your kids about like, you know, when you need to bow out pleasantly and how like, you know, if you hear kids talking a certain way, then you don't find it appropriate, that you may not want them playing with those kids. Just like if you had a play date in your house or hangout session and you heard from the other room some kid was using language that you don't find appropriate, then, you know, you may have to step in. But headphones in a locked environment, in a closed off room, is something that I feel very nervous about. Have you guys had experiences with this sort of thing on Prodigy or on Prodigy? Did I say Prodigy? What I meant to say was on Roblox or Xbox Live or PlayStation or anything, that sort of thing.
Yeah, or like Discord. Yeah, no, there are times that I hear even Julian, you know, trying to fit in, or like his friend saying words. And I go in, I go, hey, I don't like that. And I appreciate his friends' parents as well, because they too also in the background I hear, I don't like that, don't say that, you know. So I think it takes a village, you know, like, because it is almost like a play date online. And like, even like with Sophia, like there are times that she's in her room, her door's closed, she's having a private conversation. I hear something I don't like. I said, are we, you know, it might be like, are we being nice? You know, and that's all I have to say. Or I tease her and I go, watch your language. If I don't like what I'm hearing, you know, and she's like, okay, mom, you know, like, or get out of my conversation. But just to let them know, like, I'm not eavesdropping, but if
I hear it and you're saying it, there's a problem.
Exactly. If you're speaking loud enough for me to hear it, then you want me to hear it. So I'm going to say something.
If your sound waves have left the room and I hear language that I don't find okay at the dinner table, we're going to chat.
So I'm going to take the opportunity to say something, you know, and that goes with any of my kids' friends, you know, like, and, you know, I think I have a nice way of saying things, you know, but I was like, you know, like, oh, you kiss your mother with that mouth, you know, like, so.
But it's almost like message received. Ditto.
Okay, got it. Okay, how's it going? How's your day? You know, things like that. So you got to go with a smile. You got to go in like not being, I think like a authoritative necessarily. I think just like, hey, like, you know, like I saw that, I didn't like it. I'm letting you know. That's it. You know.
I feel like it depends on the kid too, because like for, you know, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I feel like this is about like fitting in. And talking a certain way or like using certain language and like hanging with everybody. I feel like the larger the group gets or the bigger the group gets with like kids that maybe they don't always hang out with, it starts to get into that questionable territory. And maybe we could shift gears because I think it does seem related to what we're talking about right now. But group chats, I think that's big part of this. So something that you probably realize you have on your phone, but maybe you don't, is on your phone. A lot of them kind of have this now. It's probably in the past couple of years. You could create like pinned conversations or group chats. And what you do basically is you are creating a group conversation where people can be invited and then you have them like pinned to your phone. you don't really have to have them pinned to your phone, but basically it saves like your quote unquote chat. If everyone's using like an iPhone, for instance, you could name the chat. You could give everyone a name. You could have like, whatever. Hey, the parents could be we're not going to start one, but you could have like, hey, the parents is like, we do it actually, the three of us with your chat group. And then, you can invite people to it. You could change the name, you could change the logo, but essentially it becomes like a mini room where everyone could chat. The problem that we've encountered, and you guys could tell me if you've had this situation come up as well, is two things. One is like my son Jacob. He has like two big groups of friends. Some are like the guys he hangs out with, some of the girls he hangs out with. The girls have kind of like stuck as like a tighter group, and they've been friends for a long time. And they started out on Facebook Instant Messenger Kids. And that was kind of cool because that's a quick parenting tip. Facebook Instant Messenger Kids, you have to set up as a parent. You make an agreement to find like the parent of the kid, and you link it that way. And then on your phone, you can see the entire conversation, which is usually like hi, LOL, whatever. It's pretty much a lot of highs. But anyway, so you can see everything popping up. But anyway, so once they gravitate away from that and they move and graduate towards having like phones, then these group chats are totally different. Now they're like on texting. And what we found is like when the groups get crazy is like these large groups. And like, for example, my son is in 6th grade and all of a sudden, like, I don't know who started it, but like there's like a couple teams, like most middle schools have teams. So he was on like, he's on the black team or the gold team, whatever. So the black team has all these boys jumped in and they started creating this group chat. And it is like the cesspool of society. So like that is a very different experience because you have random people being popping in, popping out. And one of the things that I told him, like, what do you think of this conversation? Like, do you jump in? Do you talk? He's like, I don't really say anything because most of the time they're asking for homework answers. I'm like, great. So I'm like, don't get involved. The moment you help somebody with homework and you start getting answers, they're going to be asking you every day. So that was a whole different conversation. But the point of this all is when I want to talk to you guys about a couple things. One is like monitoring, but even a greater issue, which maybe Sarah, you have a lot more insight with this thing, is like, what happens? Can you ditch out of a group chat? Because like the moment you leave, I feel like as a person giving advice to my child, I almost get curious. Like if you ditch out of a group chat and you leave the chat, that's almost like the moment everyone starts talking about you, but maybe it's not like that.
So, okay. So one, how we've raised Sophia, and Julian's now following suit, is that she didn't get TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram right away. She got, I think, TikTok first, maybe in 6th grade. Then she moved on to Snapchat
like in steps. Okay.
In 7th grade. And she just recently got Instagram. And her Instagram, maybe it's a generation. She's savvy enough to know that Instagram tends to be like the more professional platform. So that's like her, like, I'm a high school student chat. Like I'm like, like these are things I'm going to do if colleges look me up. So that's good. So we were very strict on that. We did it by baby steps. But I think the biggest thing that we've always taught the kids with Instagram and like, or anything going on their phone is that I'm not checking your phone every day. Once in a while, I may say like, hey, you've been on a lot. Can I see what's going on? Like, let's talk about what's going on your phone. But it's more the idea of, if you kind of said in their intro, if you can't say it in front of mom or dad, your principal, your religious leader perhaps, or something like that, if you can't say those things, look them in the eye and say it, then you probably shouldn't say it. There are times that she's gone to like some sort of drama or like something kind of questionable, and I said, let me see what's going on. And I said, okay, they're blowing up steam. It seems like a sub, quote unquote, which is like, like indirectly saying something about someone, like, oh, you only have good friends for a lifetime, and obviously now you guys are not friends anymore. So you take I take a picture of that from her phone, and I just save it because
to be clear,
you never know.
You're taking a picture with your phone of her phone, right? You're not taking a screenshot.
No,
we're gonna get into that in a minute, but yeah.
Yes, because nowadays these apps, they'll show if you took a screenshot or whatever. But I think the biggest thing is kind of going back to like where Sophia was like, I don't want to sleep over this person's house, is also to like, this chat is uncomfortable. They're not saying things I agree with. I'm leaving. And there's nothing wrong with leaving a chat. because it's like leaving a conversation you want to be part of. Someone at work is talking about something you're really not feeling. You say, okay, well, on that note, guys, I'm really busy. I have to go make copies. I have to go do something. I have to make a phone call, and you walk away. So why can't I tell my kids to say, you know what, this chat's getting a little crazy. I'm out of here. Recently, Julian's whole little group, 5th grade group, with middle schoolers apparently involved. They made this whole big Snapchat group. Julian did not have a Snapchat, and a whole bunch of his friends did not have Snapchat either. And it was unfortunately becoming a chat of bullying, saying unkind things to each other. The school did an excellent job, I think, of like going to each classroom, talking about if they're uncomfortable with anything that was being said. And Julian, he came home, he's like, Mom, I'm so happy. Yeah, I don't have Snapchat, because he had begged me like maybe a month ago to have it. And I said, no, you're not ready yet. Nope. No good. No good comes from it at this age, because you guys are not responsible just yet. Because it's true. You give in easily to peer pressure. You see that everyone is quote unquote anonymous. You start saying things, you don't really mean it. And then someone's feelings get hurt, you know? So he's like, oh my gosh, a whole bunch of kids were crying in class today because they were in the chat. They're going to get in trouble. They said some things about someone, you know, and I think increments, you know, that would be my advice to any parent out there, is that slowly but surely you need to have a conversation about internet safety, talk about their future in terms of like, when you say something, it's kind of there forever. And you don't know, there's a parent like me who's taking a picture of whatever you're sending out, or there's a friend, even worse in some ways, taking a picture of someone else's phone and sending that picture out to everyone. And all of a sudden you think you deleted it, but it's not really deleted. So I try to bring that up. I try to instill that with my kids, is that whatever you say is never truly deleted. You can't trust that the person you sent a message to is saying, oh, yep, that's between me and you, because it's very easy and it's very tempting to share gossip with someone. So I think that's my biggest thing, is always like, if you don't want mom and dad to see it, don't put it on writing. Talk about it on the phone real quick.
Right.
You know, better yet, a conversation face to face is better, because you never know. And I teach my kids that.
That's smart. I like the way you put some of that. One of the things is, like, as a parent, I feel like I'm going to make it sound really dated, but like, gone are the days of Polaroid photos, because everything, you don't trust your kids. Every single thing that goes online, that's permanent. It's up there. One of the things I think Snapchat is definitely worth mentioning is Snap is obviously becoming like the new protocol of like conversations and talking to people. Snapchat appears to delete things after a certain amount of time. There is no way that anything's posted on Snapchat isn't stored somewhere else. And I'm not saying that like Big Brother's watching wearing a tinfoil hat. I mean, like, somebody probably took a picture of it. Now, even if you take a picture, this is the part that's wild. And it kind of stinks, because if your child is ever in a situation where they're uncomfortable or someone's going to hurt themselves or anything like that, you have to make it clear to them it is their responsibility to tell a trusting adult, because God forbid something happens with bullying or something else where, you know, too little too late. So I feel like it would be irresponsible for us to not mention that on this show, that as parents have to look out for each other's, because dumb moments happen where kids, you know, they're not, look, we know this. Kids are not fully matured. Their brains aren't matured yet until in their early 20s, and they're impulsive. They do dumb things. They don't think. So we need to guide them in this way. But when it comes to things like Snapchat, there is this big overwhelming feeling that, like, all of a sudden somebody's the snitch. You know, the snitches get stitches, right? So like you take a screenshot, it says someone took a screenshot, and now all of a sudden they're the narc. But I will say I love Sarah's advice, because truthfully, look, I don't need to be cool. I could be the bane of my child's existence in terms of like uncool dad. I don't care. But when it comes to the way they're feeling, like Sara had mentioned, it's a pretty wise idea for you. If you feel anything's going on that you don't feel comfortable with and you see something, snap a picture with your own phone of their screen. Because there could be circumstances where, like, for example, maybe there's a parent that you're sort of friendly with, but you're not friendly with, and their kid said something that was kind of messed up, and like you want to kind of talk to them about it. You could run into a situation of like, oh, my child would never say that. And you know what? sometimes your own child says stuff and you've got to just not, so what? You got to deal with it. You know, sometimes things are going to happen.
I've been on the end of saying, hey, unfortunately, your child has said this. If you want to see evidence, I have it. It doesn't
I'm going to
bring
post
me
it online for everybody to see. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no. It doesn't bring me pride or joy, but like, I'm protecting my child. But at the same time, I always tell my kids, like with Julian when he came home with that story, I'm like, were you in that chat? Even though it's not Snapchat, but at the same time, I was like, were you in that chat? Were you talking about that chat at any point? Because I don't want surprises. Because my biggest thing is like, if the school calls me, if a parent approaches me, I'd rather know that you said something kind of crummy and I have to apologize for it, or we have to talk about it. You have to be, repercussions for it. Or I don't want surprises. Like that's like always my biggest thing. Same thing with Sophia. Like anything that's going on with her, anything I should know about before I call this teacher, before I call this parent, before I, just kind of sit back and let you see how you handle this play out in your life. And I'm trying to give you advice. Is there any part in it that you've taken part? Let me know. Even if it's like you being a horrible person, quote unquote. I'd rather know, just because I want to guide you, because we all make mistakes. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Because I think it really goes back to those AOL times where no one was monitoring us. Yeah. And a little guidance would have been nice, So I think that's how I am with my kids. It's like, because I know it's just so important now. And maybe I am slightly paranoid. I really don't. Please, I don't hover over my kids' Instagrams. They're like Snapchats. I don't hover over their text messages. I'm not really reading over those things, to be honest with you. I'm trusting they're doing good things. If there's a problem that arises, I want us to be able to have an open conversation, because then I want to know how to handle the situation if needed. I don't want a teacher or a parent to say, your child said this. I'm like, yeah, I know she said that. I talked to her about that. I didn't like how she said that. I apologize. I'd rather own it than just being like, what? Whoa, never my child,
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
I like the way that you approach it, because I feel like, we've had some conversations about it. And I think like when I first started through this process, I was like, look, I mean, when Jacob was like 3, I was like guns ablazing. I'm like, I'm going to put every parenting control on. I'm going to put like 16 cameras in their, on the doors, and I'm gonna like, they're gonna put thumb scans and eye scans and retina, whatever. But like the truth is like, and we'll talk about the article in a second, is that there is there's kind of this belief, and it's very why not go to Game of Thrones? But the idea is that like there's there was some line in Game of Thrones of like the tighter that you control, the more sand will fall between your hands. But like this idea of like you can't overly police to the degree where you're not letting your child experience some small mistakes, some little moments, some conversations where you could have where they can grow from. Because if you do that, when does it stop? 17, 18, they're going to go to college and experience that for the first time? That can't be the case. But I will say, as the parents in the household, and if, one person's not as comfortable and the other person is, or aunt, uncle, whatever, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family to have every single logon, username, password, account information of your child. That is absolutely not you invading on their privacy. That is you being a caregiver and looking out for them. God forbid something was to happen where you needed that information pronto. And another thing that you really need to be careful about, and this is where some of the monitoring comes in, is kids will create ghost accounts, and they will create secondary Google accounts and secondary accounts that they trick and find ways to do it, which may be monitoring account number 1, but you don't know about account number 2. So be really careful about that sort of thing, because that will happen. And that's where we talked about just a moment ago about like this idea of like having too much of a stranglehold in the situation where like kids will, let's be honest, kids will find a way to get around most things. And we know this already. And it's going to be a constant game of cat and mouse, if not, but you have to exhibit some degree of a happy medium, right? You have to have some degree of trust, but also keep your eyes on the prize, because I get concerned about ghost accounts and having secondary accounts and things that I don't know about. And I don't want to get to a distrusting area to that point where either like 1, they feel like they could pull one over on me, or 2, they feel like they have to pull one over on me because of our relationship.
So that's something actually, I don't follow any of Sophia's accounts. You know who follows Sophia's accounts? Her really cool, trustworthy aunt.
Oh, wow.
And she follows the accounts, and she knows we all had a conversation, family conversation, that we're not following the accounts, that Tati Sara is watching, and monitoring again, interacting with her and stuff like that. And if something pops up, Tati Sara might flag it for us, but we're not following. I have all the information if needed, but I don't have to pull the trigger because I have Tati Sara watching. And she's more comfortable with her aunt seeing whatever she's posting. I actually noticed Sophia has maybe like a fake count or two to do whatever she needs to do. But because I think we have built enough credit in terms of like that social media trusting that she says like, I gotta put on my fake Insta account right now and look at something real quick, and her and I, we share and we look, I'm like, oh, who we spying on, and things like that.
And we shut it down and go back to reality. Yeah.
Exactly. So she knows that there's the account that's like her professional life or like her school, her college career life. And then there's the account to do, God knows what she does on that account, but like she does phone. That. Yeah, but
the Walter White of Instagram accounts.
But I think because we've always kept it as you're allowed a sense of privacy, we're going to give that to you. There is a family member or two who are following you. They're the hipper, cooler ones. And as long as nothing inappropriate, and they know what our family dynamic is and what's we deem inappropriate, then we're good to go. We're Gucci, as they would say.
I feel like there's something that I think this comes to mind.
That's what we've done. I don't know.
Ooh, I like that.
No, I like it because like Sarah D, you know this to be true. Like Mike and I both have younger kids. I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle. And then you've had the experiences, with your own kids. I feel like I'm like always like, Sarah D, what do we do here? What's going on? But I feel like there's times where you just feel this like this nervous energy, and I feel like as a parent, and I don't know if really exactly if I'm saying the right words or if I'm kind of describing this the right way, but I feel like as an overarching kind of like umbrella to this whole thing is watching your kids and looking for changes in behavior, because
Absolutely.
If your child is suddenly mopey, if your child is spending a lot of time in their room, if your child is just irritable, well, they're probably teenagers, but if you have the gut instinct that something's up, check around, because that is an entirely greater importance of red flags than anything else, right? They're angry, friend drama, they're talking about it, they're getting annoyed. Cool, you can talk about it. But if something is just not right and you feel that way and you can't put your finger on it, but something is just off, maybe have some conversations, snoop around, do what you feel is right, do what you feel is comfortable, check where they've been going, talk to them to devices, have them show you some stuff, because when something doesn't feel right, it's better to be safe than sorry and check in.
And there are times I have to say that we have taken actually the phone away from Sophia when we know she's actively engaging with a friend, because they're having a little fight or a squabble, and it's like, no, I think because back in the day, we used to be able to have a fight with our friends, go on the bus, go home, maybe call, maybe not call, maybe have an away message that was cryptic and whatever. But there was some downtime, some time to breathe, some time to think about the situation. So there have been times where like, just give us the phone. You're not getting anywhere with a friend. You guys are fighting over it, going around the circle. Sometimes it's good just to take a break. And we've done that. And we've done, let's do homework, let's snuggle, let's cry, let's be angry, be separated from us. I don't know. But you need to like just take a break from the phone. And we've done that too. And that's hard, because you have to make a judgment call in terms of, is this a conversation that they absolutely need to have finished by tonight? Or is this a conversation that we're not getting anywhere? Everyone needs to take a step back and say goodnight. And we said to her, tell the friend your parents are taking the phone away from you, and then they'll talk to you tomorrow.
I was just
because
gonna
I feel
say
like
that. How do you end it? And that was my
I feel
question.
like I feel like that's how I, because like, you know, like, because like there have been times we taken the phone, I'm like, no, you know what, like you really should kind of just, because like nowadays you ghost someone, you block someone by not
Right.
responding. So I think it's better to just say to the friend, like, my parents see that I'm upset, they're taking my phone away, or like my parents are being poop heads.
Perfect.
And taking my phone
blame
away.
me. I'd rather you blame me. Just
Blame us.
do it.
Blame
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
Blame
yeah.
me. I'm done with you. Mom's annoyed. Take the phone. She's taking my phone away. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Because they need a break sometimes. And I think sometimes that, even though I took the phone away from Sophia when she was in middle school at night, but even then, like everyone had a curfew, but sometimes some kids don't have a curfew, so they keep going on and on and on all night long.
Yes.
So at least like just to let them know, like, dude, like you could be responding all night long, but my
kid's
phone's
not.
getting taken away.
Yeah.
So we'll see you
Yeah.
later, you know?
Right.
So I think that's like a big thing too we've learned.
Something that I think, do you take the phones at certain ages? Like I know, like Sophia's a certain age and all whatever else. I feel like I'm at my kid's age level at 11, middle school, 6th grade, that sort of thing. I feel more comfortable with surrendering all the devices now at this time at that age. So we don't let that phone go into a bedroom at night. It at a certain time, phones are off. You plug that thing in, it charges in a certain location in the house. Maybe that's in the kitchen, maybe that's in our room, whatever it is. But in middle school and 6th grade, that phone doesn't go with them to the bedroom.
I've been kind of thinking of creating a docking station where we could put all our devices for the end of the night, and as the kids get older,
that sort of thing.
We have that too.
so that way they don't have to take it in with them. They could dock it and then go to bed.
Perfect.
Yep.
And obviously, as I get older, we made the joke before, like how old is too old, but maybe when they're 10th grade, 11th grade, maybe something like that is a time where it's some trust, right? And that's where the conversations change. But at this early stage, where most of us that are having conversations are more concerned about the younger ones, that phone probably should not go with them. Real fast, you got some problems, you got some issues. We have an article we're going to take a look at. Side note, taking things away. Like an Xbox, sometimes you just got to take the phone away or take the controllers away because it's hard to play Xbox without controllers. But on a side note, we found an interesting article this week. There's two of them, actually, but one of them is from Wired. We're going to link that article in the show notes. Another one is from the New York Times. But what was interesting with the overarching thought, which I think we've spent some time talking about here, one of it is about what to know about limiting your child's screen time. There's some issues and discussions about being concerned about changes in behavior, about bullying, about how things like that could occur. And one of the big discussion points that I think we saw in the Wired article is this idea that as a parent, what do you feel comfortable with in establishing in your house as far as like setting up boundaries and setting up a place in which your child has room to breathe versus having on handcuffs from the very get-go. I feel like in that article, one of the things that, the person who wrote the article had to take a hard look in the mirror and make a decision with is like, how do I see my child with a phone? Is it something that I want to just kind of like, be monitoring every second of the day, or do I want to back off from that and let them breathe a little bit? And I don't think we need to overly talk about that here, but I do feel like we've kind of come to the consensus that there has to be some level of trust, and you have to build that trust, and you have to build that trust and show your child and model that with your child about, being present in a conversation, putting your phone down, being there, talking to them, and then when you're offline, or where you're not, or I should say offline is confusing the conversation, when you're not with the family at dinner having a conversation, how to model good behavior with your phones and like how you should talk, what you should expect, and how I think Sara said it best. No need to go into it all over again, but if you wouldn't say it in front of your parents, you wouldn't say it in front of your teacher, you wouldn't say it to a religious figure, you probably shouldn't say it here, right?
Yeah.
But just one quick thing to kind of think about as a parent is, and I know this sounds kind of weird, but there are always issues where sometimes kids will fake or pretend to be another child. So as a parent, and I know this sounds bizarre, sometimes when they get close to the age where you want them to have accounts, sometimes as a parent, if you make the account for your child, doesn't mean they have to use it yet, but maybe you want to kind of have that all set up ahead of time and ready and monitored so that when the time comes for your child to have an account, that you're not running the risk of someone pretending to be them because you have the account already made. That's kind of a side note. That's something that kind of comes up in these articles a little bit, is this idea of someone pretending to be somebody else and that whole thing. But there are ways around that. We could talk about it at a different time, but if you ever feel like somebody's mimicking you, there are customer support things on all of these websites where essentially what you have to do is take a picture of yourself holding the username through a genuine email address, and then they'll reset the account for you. But I think that's pretty much the gist of the articles for the most part for this week, right? So, all right. So the question this week is, what do you guys do at home for monitoring? Do your kids have their own devices? Do you have a shared device, shared accounts? What happens on that TV when it comes time to logging onto YouTube? Is everyone sharing it? Because when you get to work and you look at your phone, holy moly, did you want to see Paw Patrol? I say no. So we'd love to hear from you. If you have questions or comments for us, a topic, an idea, a parenting story, or a fail that you experienced, you can contact us. Maybe even tell us about a time that your child has had your phone and done something wrong. One, you can send a message on our Hey the Parents voicemail line at 559-LAY-KIDS or 559-537-5437. Two, you can email the show at heytheparents@gmail.com. Three, you could join us on Instagram or Blue Sky with the username at HeyOtherParents. And we are moving on to our time to unplug. Don't you forget that you will be a better we if you take care of me. And this one hopefully will not be about the internet because, friends, we've spent a lot of time talking about it. So, Mike Levine, why don't you take us out here, sir?
So this week I have these beautiful dice, and I'm holding them up to the camera so you could see, but unfortunately you listeners cannot see. But I wound up playing Dungeons and Dragons this week with a couple of my buddies, and this past week. And they had dice, and
yeah, they did. They had really good dice.
And I felt out of the loop. I did.
Aww.
So I was like, you know what? I have to go get my own Dungeons and Dragon dice. And I did some searching online. I found like a slick deal in GameStop, and they had dice for like 50 cents. So I got myself some dice and a nice little medieval coin purse here. To hold them in.
I believe you were talking about
enjoyed that.
Chainmail, yes, chainmail.
So randomly, our buddy Mike Levine here is probably discussing our other podcast. For those of you that are into Dungeons and Dragons and want to hear a bunch of goofy people play Dungeons and Dragons, which they haven't played since they were 11, or some people have a little bit more knowledge. Camp Pain is our other podcast that Mike and I are on. Sara has made an executive decision to separate herself from that. But we are, that's where Mike is talking. So we do D&D podcasts. It's kind of ridiculous. We play live and we record it and we put episodes out every other week on Fridays. So that Mike now has his own set of dice and now he can be cool like the rest of us geeks. Yay. Sara D, drop a critical 20 and what do you got for yours?
Oh, man. So I think the biggest thing as a mom is balancing your hobbies. I love making things. I love decorating. I love, like, anytime you have a party, I'm the person that's like, ooh, let's do this. I saw this on Pinterest. I made a wreath that I made many wreaths before. This is my first like ever ribbon wreath, as silly as it sounds. And like I think like for arts and crafter, that's kind of like one of the more easier ones. I watched a YouTube video. Hey YouTube, and this lady taught me how to make a ribbon wreath, and I got one done. I made a little Easter one with the little cute bunny ears. I'm so proud of her, and it just brought me some joy. It was something nice to do this weekend to like treat myself to do something fun. By myself.
That's awesome. And then maybe we'll post a video or something on how to do it. I'll
take a little picture of my little wreath too. All its
awesome.
cuteness. Show it off.
Oh my God, I love it. So this week, my friends, the time has arrived. Avatar: The Last Airbender. The series, the live action series. Yes, so we know that has dropped. It dropped a couple days after we posted our episode last week. But so here's the gist. If you have seen Avatar: The Last Airbender and you have seen the original cartoon series, you will know that it starts out as a kiddie show, and it quickly, by the end of the first episode, it transcends into much deeper topics, much more serious things, and it actually is a really well-developed show. The characters, the stories, it's magnificent. Then there was a movie that came out, and it was a train wreck disaster.
Horrible, yeah.
Nobody should see that. That is so. Most people associate
Yeah, that's terrible.
any sort of live action Avatar with that movie. So the TV show, if you could just ignore the original live action movie, and just stick right to the idea of the cartoon, this thing is amazing. So is he acting incredible? No. Does it matter? Probably not. But the idea is that they've taken the story and they've stayed true to it for the most part. I would say, like, if you think of it, they've stuck, like, it's not frame by frame, but 80% of the story is basically the story. But what they've done is given it painted in a little bit of a different light. And what I love about the show, aside from some of the really great actors and actresses that are on it, is they've tried to stay true to the cultural aspects of it. So like the Water Tribe has kind of more of a Native American kind of feel to it, and they've hired a lot of Native American actors and actresses. They've kept kind of the Asian kind of culture and things alive. Uncle Iroh is amazing. You know him from like Kim's Convenience. There's so many great actors and actresses in this. But I will tell you, like, it is, for people that grew up with Avatar: The Last Airbender, this is now like what you would graduate to. And I say that because if you think about it, it's not really a spoiler because happens in the first episode. In the original Avatar: The Last Airbender, they wipe out the Airbenders. They kill them all because the Fire Nation wants to get rid of them for fear that an Avatar will rise up. That's different in a cartoon than a live action show because they are trying to kill all these people. So know your audience, know where your kids are, know where their comfort level is. But if my son Ethan, he's in third grade. We watched it when he was younger. We just checked in with him, make sure he wasn't too nervous. He was sort of okay with it. A couple scenes were a little scary. It gets amazing. And if you remember the Kyoshi Warriors, you people, know at home what I'm talking about. Episode 2 will blow your flipping mind away. It is so good. So I haven't watched all of it yet. I'm on episode 1 and 2. We loved it so far. There's 8 episodes. They're roughly between 45 minutes to an hour each. But they are like, it's like watching a movie, a good version of the movie. And did they release
them all? Or
they're all out.
Or is it like, oh, wow.
So I believe if I'm not mistaken, like when you watch the show, every season they call it a book, like book 1, book 2, book 3, whatever. Mm-hmm. So this first chunk of episodes, I believe, is probably season 1 or book 1 of the show.
Gotcha.
Hoping that they will continue to move on and do more of them, and then there's supposed to be a movie at the end, yada yada. But they're great, and if you like the characters, there was some concerns about Captain Boomerang, Sokka's brother, whatever. But he's a little different than the original cartoon. But I think he's really good. I'm kind of like enjoying his character. So when you first pop it on, give it a chance to breathe a little bit, get through episode 1, stick on episode 2, and I think you will absolutely want to jump along for the ride and hop back on the TV as soon as possible to watch the rest of them, because I think you will dig it, my friends.
I'm excited.
Very nice.
All right. So I think we had a good chance to talk about internet safety. We learned from each other. We talked about kids from different ages, what it's like having kids young with a YouTube in front of them on iPads versus having kids move and gravitate for instant messenger to group chat to having group chats with their friends and Snapchat and beyond. But hey, depending on what kids your age are, we're all in this one together. We'd like to take a special moment to thank our listeners and supporters for donating to the show. If you want to help support the show so we can keep making shows like this one, we have a link to donate to the show in our show notes. If you don't have the means to do so, we totally understand, but we hope you can tell your friends or family about our podcast so we can reach more parents. And if you feel really inspired, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We can't wait to explore this parenting thing with you next week on Hey the Parents, because it's the 3 of us and all of you. Don't forget to hug your kids and charge your Chromebooks. That's going to do it for me. For Mike and for Sarah, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Peace out.
Hey the Parents is produced by Mike Levine, Sarah Desirines, and me, Michael Height. I edit and mix our show. Our intro voice recording was done by the one and only Coltrane. If you like our show, we will hope you consider going to our show notes and help support the podcast. Or tell people about this crazy show. Find us online on Instagram or Blue Sky at Hey the Parents, or send us an email at heytheparents@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. Peace.